Mrs. Carlotti said we can have up to 3 people in our group. We're only 2. Come on, Emilio. Let him work with us. Okay, I guess. So Justin has realised that Brian is normally on his own in class, so therefore he wants to include him to make sure he's not feeling lonely. How lovely is that? Mrs. Carlotti gives the class directions for the project. Your assignment is to work together to write a story about what you see in that photograph. Use your imagination and have fun. Whoa, cool, says Emilio. What kind of people do you think live in houses like that? I don't know, but I bet Brian could draw them to go with our story, says Justin. So Justin has realised that even though Brian is quiet and shy, he has a talent. He's fantastic at drawing, and Justin has realised Brian's potential. So maybe by encouraging Brian will also start to realise his potential too. Brian smiles as he takes out his lucky pen. Oh, look, they're all working together, and can you see how happy Brian looks? He's smiling, isn't he? He's got some colour back in him. It's lunchtime again, Brian's least favourite part of the day. Another 20 long minutes of children talking and laughing with everyone but him. Brian! He hears someone shout, "Hey Brian, over here!" Brian turns and sees Justin waving him over. Emilio nods at Brian as he makes room for him at the table. So Justin realises that Brian normally sits on his own at lunch, but again, he doesn't want him to feel that way again. So therefore, he's invited him to sit with him and Emilio. How lovely. What a good friend. Maybe, just maybe, Brian's not so invisible after all. What a lovely story. So at the beginning of the story, Brian was feeling very lonely, but when the new boy arrived and started including him, he then felt very happy and he no longer felt lonely. Now, what type of thing might make you feel lonely? Could you pause the video now and have a think? Think about what we've read in the book and your own ideas. Okay, yeah, too. So you might feel lonely if you're being left out. So like Brian was in the story, everyone at school was leaving him out. They didn't want him to be on their team. They wouldn't let him sit next to them at lunch. They didn't invite him to the party. So therefore, that can make you feel very lonely. And also, he was being overlooked by the teacher just because he was shy and quieter than the other children in the class. He felt like he was overlooked and probably like the teacher didn't have time for him, which isn't nice at all and can make you feel very lonely. Now, sometimes some things can make us feel lonely that have nothing to do with people. So at the minute, we are in our coronavirus situation and we're all at home, aren't we? And we can't see our friends very often, especially if you're not coming to school. So therefore, some of us might feel lonely if we can't go out and see our friends. So therefore, I think it's very important to talk about this feeling at the moment. Now, what can you do when you're at school to help somebody if they are feeling lonely? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, yeah, too. What ideas did you come up with? Well, I thought that first and foremost, you need to notice them. You need to include them. That could be allowing them to sit by you at lunchtime, including everybody in your games at break, sitting by a new person in the lunch hall. Okay, all of these things you can do to include and notice people, because ultimately you can make someone feel not lonely. By including them, you can change a person from feeling lonely to not lonely anymore and happy. And yes, it can have a big impact on their mood, on their feelings, because when you feel lonely, you can maybe feel sad, you could feel angry maybe, and you could feel worried. Why does nobody want to play with me? But if you include people, they will start feeling happier, they'll be excited about going to school. So therefore, you can have a big impact on people's mental health. If you include them, they'll no longer feel lonely. Now, what can you do if you feel lonely? Pause the video again and have a think. Okay, yeah, too. Well, if you're feeling lonely, first of all, you've got to recognise it's normal, okay? Lots and lots of people feel lonely. It's not just you, and you've got to recognise that. You should also make sure that you talk to someone. So at home at the moment, if you're feeling lonely, you could talk to a family member, maybe your brother or your sister or your mum or your dad. And then if you're at school, you can talk to a trusted teacher Like you could talk to me or Miss Venkot, you could talk to Mr. Day, you could talk to a lunchtime supervisor, and we will all help you if you feel lonely at school. And also, it's also important to maybe start a new hobby, because new hobbies can make you feel happy and give you something, especially at the moment when we're at home, give you something to occupy yourselves so that you don't feel lonely. Maybe that's drawing, maybe you're learning to bake. Okay, give yourself something to take your mind off the fact that we're all stuck in our houses. And when we're out of the coronavirus situation, you could start a new hobby and join a new group. And then also you can make new friends through that group. So maybe if you feel lonely at school, you can go to that group and you have lots of other friends in that group. It's not just about the people that you have at school. Okay, now your task is, I would like you to write some advice, okay? Now you can either write some advice to Brian in the story to tell him what to do when he feels lonely. So who can he talk to? Maybe he should start a new hobby. Give him some advice, okay? So write a short paragraph, maybe 6 or 7 lines, telling him what he should do. Now, you can also choose, rather than giving Brian advice, you could choose to give somebody else advice of how to help someone when they're feeling lonely, okay? So you either choose to give the advice to Brian or to give the advice to someone else in the class, where someone else is feeling lonely, okay? So they can include them, they can notice them, but how can they do that? And why is it important that they do that? Okay, well, have a lovely rest of your day, Year 2, and I'll see you in our next lesson. Bye.